in another lab that's an industrial lab, and this professor that I'm working with is so passionate about his work. What my 4 weeks assignment was, working in this lab book, was to measure the amplitude of these waves that mimic a dam.
Yeah.
And for 4 weeks, I had to measure how high the amplitude was and the frequency of it for 4 weeks. I dreaded those 4 weeks. But when I walked away, I realized civil engineering is not for me. And that's only just a little small snippet. So now fast forward. Now I'm a senior, a summer, going to my senior in high school, and I'm able to go to the science program by the National Science Foundation. It was a stipend. I was able to buy my first little putt-putt car with this money. I get on campus for 8 weeks through the food science program, and I learned about this antibiotics that rabbits create that help prolong the shelf life of a pharmaceutical drug. It was in a laboratory. It was in a research type stage. What was my position? I'm 16, about to be 17, and I'm in the lab for 8 weeks, and I'm learning about chromatography and doing some basic type of lab techniques. And what I learned is it was a lot of not only lab, but I was also working on my math skills. I had a teacher that was basically with us, that was part of our mentor, and I started noticing I was missing some things than my other peers. Those peers were underrepresented minorities too, but my math wasn't the same as their math. And my writing wasn't that same either. So I'm missing something. I'm now 16, about to go into college. And so I finished the program, and I realized I didn't want to go into ag science. So the only thing that was left, and I really loved chemistry, I chose chemical engineering. I got exposed to chemical engineering. To this day, this is where I finished, but it was the most hardest thing academically that I ever did. I'm from Gary, Indiana, and the teachers loved me, but there were some things that I had missed along the way. And the type of personality that I am, I went ahead and I did summer school before. After I graduated from high school, I'm in the summer with my trig teacher, getting me ready for the math before I go into the college. So I still had to do catch up. And I just did catch up all throughout undergrad. But then I began to realize something's missing. So let's move fast forward. I'm going to take you through the study that I did, and I have a passion. I work on the state board with Brooke. I don't know if you guys know Brooke. Brooke is our chair of our state board for the state of Iowa. Brooke. So she's my #1 fan. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay. She's here. All right. So the study is basically we're phrasing it as leveraging promising practice supports female students of color in elementary through college and ultimately STEM professional career. I want you all to know that the research that we do, when you look at underrepresented minorities and women, they always usually put it together. So just keep that in mind. Even though I say women of color and the participants in my study were majority women of color, just keep that in mind. What is the problem? We all know about the problem, don't we? We always hear about the STEM problem. Pretty much we know that there's a workforce gap. We know if we look at the demographics, if you look on a college campus, if you put women and minorities together, 70% of that population is the college. But if you look at the pursuit of STEM careers, it's 45%. So what we're trying to do is, I work in manufacturing during the day. I make ink, and right here, there's a corporate headquarters here. And you go in a grocery store, basically all of those packaging that you see, Oreos, things, any type of ice cream in the freezers on the shelf, Ritz crackers, all that ink on the packaging, we make here in Des Moines and in North Carolina. And when you look at that ink of that packaging, basically, when you look at that ink, basically we have open recs. What I'm trying to basically say is we have open recs at our job. And that's for a lot of industries. And there are certain industries that's always open because there's not enough to fill the pipeline. So when we look at those, the opportunity is with the minorities and the women. Okay, so the next slide, as we look at it, we say, okay, if we look at our white and our Asian counterparts, we know demographically there's 56% white students on a college campus, and when you look at the STEM attainment, they are attaining 6% of the STEM careers. But if you look at like Hispanics and African Americans, we all know they basically are 2 times behind in the attainment. So there's an opportunity there. And also with women, there's an opportunity there. All right, so the study is a qualitative study. I'm a woman of numbers. I love statistics, but this study was not a statistics type study. So I dealt a lot with words, and it was probably one of the most, it tried me in my development of a writer. It humbled me like I never knew how, and it made me very vulnerable in front of my advisor. But we get through it. We get through it. So it was a phenomenon to understand what are the experiences of these underrepresented minorities, and really specifically women of color. What are their experiences when they participate in a long-term STEM enrichment program? What's the definition of long-term? It's 2 years, at least 2 years. What's also different about this study is that these young women were coming back to be mentors, and that also helped the retention for them to finish undergrad and go on to their careers. Well, so what's the significance of this study? The significance of this study is basically that all the stakeholders is pretty much maybe almost anybody in this room, from educators to administrators to community leaders, because the significance of it basically better in our community. There's reducing the disparity. The role of the STEM enrichment programs to keep student engagement from elementary through college. And then if you have like ArtForce, I know a little bit about ArtForce, I've been following that nonprofit. If you work with youth and you have problems with retention, some of the findings that I will share, you can translate that over to those findings. It's quite interesting. All right, so the theoretical framework. This is a really interesting, Russell Berners is a Russian researcher. He says, when you see a child develop, we have to understand what are the different impacts that they have in regards to whatever you're trying to study. So we're trying to study why aren't young women wanting to stay in STEM pursuit? And he says, first, you have to look at the individual. We have to think about their self-confidence, their self-efficacy. How do I feel comfortable in doing these math problems? They have to look at their motivation and their interests. And how do I identify as a STEM professional? Do I really identify as a STEM professional? So you first start with the person and as they develop. The next factor you have to think about is who is their network? What's their microsystem? So a microsystem, for an example, is their school, their peers. STEM enrichment program is what we're looking at. And then their family are some examples of the networks in their area. And the next layer after that is what is the interaction? How is this peers in a school interacting that impacts the student, this young woman? How is the STEM enrichment program interacting? This is the mesosystem. How is this mesosystem of the school and the STEM enrichment program interacting to impact this individual? The next layer is when we say, well, how does legislature, Brooke and I, as we sit on the state board and we see some of these rules come through, I know I am, and I know she is too, asking ourselves, how is this impacting all students in Iowa? So that layer of exosystem, it tells us what is the legislature that's impacting. And so for this study, there was an act called the Competes Act in 2007. And during that presidential term, they basically were inviting a lot of international students to come, bring your knowledge and get an education here. Stay after your education and develop the intellectual property. And then we will continue to grow and be the first in regards to STEM endeavors and innovation. Times change. But this helps understand what is the indirect impact of a legislature impacts the individual, okay? And then let's go to the outer one. The very outer one is called a macro system, societal norms. How does gender, ethnicity, and socioeconomic impact impacts that individual indirectly? How does society say, hey, Kim Wayne, when I was 13, what does society think about you? What are those impacts? So what I love about this framework is basically really consider everything that may impact that student and desiring to pursue a STEM career. I am not going to read this, but I just wanted you all to know how much work this was. I used to have a picture and I couldn't find it, but imagine my living room wall. I started to try to do this on Post-it notes. It did not work. So I learned a software just to get me to this point. But just for your reference, if you want to know how does this work for an individual, if you go all the way over here, so for an individual system, if you want to know basically how does a young woman, her persistence and motivation is impacted by pursuing STEM, you can go to all those research authors and look at those articles. So if you're interested in informal history of STEM learning, you can go over here and look at those different categories. So go ahead and use it. I would feel really good if you know. Okay, so what's the methodology? And this is really, really cool. I saw a slide about transformative and the national speaker. I didn't realize realize this is where I took my, the nonprofit science, the science program that I'm running is 7 years old. And we decided we saw a need, a group of us started working on this need to address it. Well, going through the doctoral program, I began to formalize my learning and learned, wow, what we're doing is called transformative. It's putting that marginalized voice, they are getting empowered to make action. And I just felt so empowered by understanding, like, this is the formalness of it. So then, of course, and I didn't realize it's social justice type theory, but it's really great to put it into a formal package. All right, so we had 11 participants. They were all adults. They ranged 18 to 30. They were majority low income, and I would say about 37% was middle or higher. 36% of them were refugees. And their STEM enrichment program, some of them started as early as 4th grade and as late as high school. The data collection, everything was through interviews. So just imagine 11 participants, 33 interviews or more, okay? And it just basically said, hey, what is your history? Just tell me about who you are, your education, your family. The second interview was saying, hey, can you reconstruct your STEM enrichment program experience? The third one was, okay, coming back, is there anything that you want to reflect on, that you want to share in this experience? So we took all those interviews and then we coded it and came up with these themes. But before we did that, we have to make sure that we're credible in our study. We have to make sure it's goodness and trustworthiness. So I had a third interviewer with me to conduct the interviews and also help me code the data to create credibility. We also did member checks and just make sure we had adequate engagement. I have this in here. These are just the different STEM enrichment programs. So it went from, I don't know if you guys heard of course you heard of Science Bound. We had some Kids College in Marshalltown. We had Nesby Jr., Jules Academy. We had Geek Squad from Best Buy. There was just a varied. Some of them was Y. They varied, if I could say, there were small to large nonprofits, multi-million-dollar nonprofits to very, very less than $100,000 nonprofits. All right, so let's get to the things. Let's get to the meat. So there was 10 themes, and what I'm going to do to keep it simple is I'm going to just keep it in categories. Individual, what was the things related to individual, the individual person, the family, schools, STEM enrichment programs, attributes, and interactions and society influences. So looking at the individual, so remember we're talking about self-efficacy, we're talking about self-confidence, we're talking about what motivates this young woman to stay in STEM, right? And they tell me after the interviews, when we code this information, they say theme number 1 was the STEM enrichment program and staff created a place where participants felt welcomed and valued. It sounds so basic, but it was like a revelation. They said, I felt so welcomed. And then after I felt welcome, I felt valued. And then after I felt valued, I felt like I belonged. So as an example of exemplar, and mind you, I have all this information in my head too, so I just picked out a couple of examples. And this one young lady, she was talking about Science Bound. She says, they are amazing, the staff. They truly are, they care for you, and they know everyone's name, and you're not a number, okay? Theme number 2, the STEM enrichment program and supported participants move outside their comfort zone. They got pushed outside their comfort zone, things that they did they've never done before, okay? So one of them said, I love that. She went to Paris, okay, through her STEM enrichment program, and she said, good things happen when you reach out and when you step aside of your comfort zone. And it wasn't all fun and games, but Lacey, for an example, said, I didn't have a positive environment in my home life. So I knew that I had to do something different. She goes, I didn't step out of my comfort she goes, my environment would have impacted me if I didn't step out of my comfort zone and take initiative to use the situation as motivation. Theme 3, the STEM enrichment program basically had cognitive and non-cognitive opportunities. So of course, many of them dealt with their algebra and pre-calculus skills sets, but the non-cognitive was quite interesting, and it dealt with the individual. And as one of them said, Kenzie, Target Holt did was that the marine biology didn't. It really instilled a lot of confidence in me. So there were some things that they were teaching that was soft skills, okay? Theme 4, looking at family, looking at those participants, we had low engagement and we had high engagement. There were some families that were connected and some family members that was very supportive, wasn't supportive. So looking at, I'm going to give you an example of a low engagement. Lacey was kind of interesting because in the middle of her high school career, she was put in foster care. And these are synonym names. These are not their real names, just know that. And so she didn't have really a good relationship with her mom, but there are some things that has happened that was part of her network that kept her focused. And I went to her graduation last year. She graduated with a bachelor's in neuroscience. So yeah, so just know, it's stellar. So there's ways to keep them focused and keep them pursued. And then looking at theme 6, really just starting early with the exposure. A lot of them just said, you know, if I started earlier, I would know in high school. And that's what happened to me. It's like, I still didn't know that I really wanted to be a chemical engineer. I don't even know if I still want to be a chemical engineer. But I knew what I didn't like, so. So theme 5, the participants experienced non-supportive educators along their journey while STEM enrichment programs counter those experiences. And so what this is really getting at is we all are going to experience something that is not hunky-dory or supportive. But how they did that, they were able to come to that safe place, and they were able to have those hard conversations. And so one of the comments was from Liliana. She was talking about NSBE Junior, and she got exposed to NSBE Junior. She was able to go to a conference. Do you guys know what NSBE is? No, of course not. Okay, let me share with you what NSBE is real quick. National Society of Black Engineers, and you can get exposed to NSBE at high school if there's a chapter. And it's a student-ran chapter. It's over 5,000 strong, and the founding chapter was at Purdue. I went to Purdue. So there's 6 regions, so it's national. And she was in high school when she got exposed to it. And when she got exposed to it, she went to this national convention and she felt welcome. And she was just basically saying that when you get behind closed doors, they can have those real good conversations about, professionally, that you can handle yourself very well. And so in regards to this particular theme, when she says, I didn't feel supportive, maybe she's getting a PhD in computer engineering. She said, I didn't feel very supportive, but she can go to NSBE and ask, hey, how would you handle this? So it became a resource. All right, theme 7, okay, there was just benefits. There's just benefits in regards to STEM enrichment programs. They were able to have interns in high school. One went to Paris, another went to a national science fair. Just being able to expose, they connect you to other opportunities, okay? And then theme number 8, the STEM enrichment programs created role models and mentors, and then it provided inspiration, which created a pipeline of giving back. So, so for an example, Melanie says, she just really pushed me. And so what happened is she was in Science Bound, and she ended up leaving Science Bound because there was another food science program for underrepresented minorities, and then they had a mentor. Her mentor was in her mentor, her supervisor, and another role. So she was just saying how this woman really pushed her to be more. And then the next one here talks about participants gave back to the STEM enrichment programs. This is really, they were saying, hey, now I was a participant, now I was able to serve, and I was able to help another. And it acted as a form of retention. Liliana, she was talking about leaving computer engineering. And she said, but there's somebody else that looks like me, so if I leave, who's going to help? I want to be able to help, So it was just a powerful giving back, retention. It played really well. I'm almost done, okay? You guys okay?
Oh, you're fine.
All right. How's the pace? Am I talking too
Eating it
fast?
up.
Okay. All right. Theme 9. The participants did not seek out STEM enrichment programs. None of these women said, I want to go to STEM camp. No. The power of encouragement. So with some of these women, so the first column talks about family. The mother is basically, or they have a sibling that sought out information to get them involved, okay? Or they saw a brother or older sibling in something and that got them connected. Some of them had educators. I love this about Vienna. Vienna said, I think I was lucky to have a teacher who noticed me. Oh my goodness. Who noticed me, the power of an educator, And then mentors and community leaders. There is a gentleman that works for the Chamber of Commerce of the city, connects with Liliana's grandmother and said, I know of a NSBE Junior chapter that's starting. I think that Liliana would be great to participate. Who knew? You know, and now she's about to finish up her PhD. So the power of everyone in this room, it doesn't matter what type of job you have. The key thing I did notice is that they are well respected. Those encouragers, they have a good disposition, reputation. Lastly, theme 10, gender and ethnicity. It says issues related to gender and race still was prevalent. It is what it is, right? It's here. But STEM enrichment programs provided support, confidence, and for the participants. So one of the things is that they're in a room, and Mary talks about when you're in a less diverse environment, it's kind of easy to get discouraged. And then later on, she says, then she asks herself, do I belong here? You know, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome there, right? Then she says, when you're surrounded by people that look like you, it gives you hope. So imagine if you're not, these are grown-ups. They were young when they were thinking about this. But imagine if you are young and you really don't understand why you're feeling the way you feel, and you don't know the imposter syndrome. You don't know stereotype threat. So how can we help them feel safe and belong, even if they don't look like them? And then another one, young lady, Vienna was talking about, she said there is a huge gap between ELL classes and the mainstream courses. And she was in AP. She tested out ELL, and she ended up getting into some AP courses. But she said something needs to change, you know. So it was just interesting to hear. She just turned 18, so to hear her analysis. Let's see. And then I had one young lady that was white, and she said, let me give you this different perspective. She said, I didn't have the whole race or gender issue. I had just a financial issue. I worked a lot. I couldn't really experience that college life, and I appreciate that because everyone had a financial issue that I interviewed. Okay, so I'm not gonna read you everything on here. I'm just gonna pick out one implication. And so what do we know now that we didn't know after this study? And I really thought that was interesting about the non-cognitive skill development, because what that does is empowers our youth to know how to address certain feelings and recognize certain feelings. So if I'm in a room and I'm the only person of color, how do you work it? Carry yourself accordingly. You know, and being able to train our students to, because you can't control the system. The system is what it is, but you can control your individual self. And so being able to carry yourself accordingly for that. So teaching our kids about non-cognitive skills and address biases. And then we look at the implications continue. We understand for women and underrepresented minorities, when you feel welcomed and valued in a program, their interest, they contribute to their interest. And eventually over time, they start to feel like they belong. And then this creates STEM retention. Let me tell you a really quick story. So we have 8 weeks of programming just passed, which was Academy, and we have 10 youth workers. They're about 15 years old to like 22. And some of them are college students. And it was so interesting. I just looked at them and they evolved, and they get paid, and they assistant instructor. And everyone, the first session, everyone is kind of like, who are you? And they represent different ethnicities and socioeconomic status. And then I noticed like by week 2, they chit-chatting and they're kind of developing relationships. Week 3, they got a group meet. I'm not invited on the group meet. They got their own conversation, whatever. That is the power of friendships. Oh, we need some help with each other, and that's the power of networks, and that's what we want, because now they look forward to each other coming back. And guess what? Oh, you coming back next year? And I'm thinking, yes, retention, retention, retention. So it's so power of relationships. And let's see. Okay.
Oh, you got time.
Okay, and so I will pick out participation in long-term STEM enrichment programs creates space, such that about the comfort zones. So what we do in our programming, a lot of programming, it pushes them. They've not done anything before. We try to make it something that they're going to experience in the classroom. So these students are writing code such that they are creating a wearable technology that blinks when it touches. You know, and we do a little pre-work prior to get them a little further ahead to make it work, or sometimes it doesn't work too. And we talk about perseverance. But we do things like they made a little dollhouse in this construction engineering. They have to take the LED and learn about electricity, basic electricity. So what we're doing, that's outside of their comfort zone. They're not doing that at home. I didn't even do it at home, right? So then they take it with them. They get to take their projects with them because our sponsors help us do that. And then they take it home and they see their siblings, the siblings teach their siblings. So we create that community of more STEM learning and learning in general. So when we create that outside of their comfort zone, it results in new opportunities and exposures. It sparks another level of innovation, right? Okay, so recommendations. For our parents, of course, I've heard this even in some of the other workshops, exposure and encouraging our students is huge. Parents' engagement and encouragement, it just really, really influences that STEM pursuit. K through 12 educators, just making sure that our classrooms are welcomed and valued. It's nothing new, right? But it's just reiterating, it's so important. And then for the K through 12 educators, if we can partner with STEM enrichment programs, it just helps prolong increase their learning. And then what the STEM enrichment programs, getting ahead of myself, can do is help with that cognitive skills development also. For STEM enrichment programs, one of the things is, again, the cognitive, the non-cognitive. They're so important to be able to help them learn how to not survive in a situation when they're the only one, but to thrive in it, to thrive in it, that growth mindset. And then higher ed, I really like this one in regards to when we're on campus and there's groups that are specifically for women or specifically for minorities or some type of affinity group, to measure their enrollment. So we take that organization, what's the participation rate like? If it's low compared to how many minorities have enrolled, then we gotta set a plan of corrective action. But the key to it is having that accountability to improve. So what are my final thoughts? If I was able to do a presentation without PowerPoint and just have this, it would be great. But I have to grow into that. So what are my final thoughts? Basically start early. This is so important. And if the parents can help do that, that will just really put them on and a continued one step ahead. Next is having a welcoming environment, then create value. Eventually the students will want to belong and stay. The third, encouragement can come from anywhere. Parent, teacher, a Chamber of Commerce leader. And then the non-cognitive skill development can aid in intention and support growth mindset. So really developing our students to educate them more about skills. Okay. All right, so I can start my birthday right after these Q&A. Are there any questions?
Nope.
I don't feel like I did my job if I didn't get any Q&A. Somebody give me a question. I need one question, just one. We can be done now. Any questions?
Is there NSBE in our local schools, high schools? Is anyone aware?
There's a NSBE junior, but yeah.
It's not in the school though. Yeah,
Oh.
it's Oak Ridge neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
The Links chapter is doing one in Oak Ridge neighborhood.
There's a student chapter at Iowa State, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's no NSBE junior. Are you looking for NSBE junior? Or
Right, the high school level.
Oh, high school.
And women in science.
The engineering program applies, and they do a lot of outreach as well.
Mm-hmm.
The College of Engineering has Iowa State engineering kids, and like my daughter participated summer one-day camp, and only like $40 engineer for girls for a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then so Iowa State tries to do, especially College of Engineering, they are trying to be very purposeful because they know that females in general, but specifically they're really trying to find ways for them to engage and be a part of that conversation because they know, especially specifically some of their majors
Sure.
are very male dominant.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it also has Society of Hispanic Engineers.
Sure.
And then they do a robust travel program for middle school and high school
Mm-hmm.
girls in the fall or the spring.
Yeah, so these are student ran. That's the key, that they don't have an executive director, and that's it's definitely a demand and a need. There's only so much, because we would have one of the instructors come or a volunteer come from NSBE, but SHIP too. These are, because it's student ran, correct, SHIP?
SHIP, they have an advisor.
They do. They have
Yeah,
okay.
they're just like the,
Yeah.
they're a
Yep.
national organization
Yep.
also.
Yep, very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with it too. The question is like, can we, because the students are the ones that come, that will help us come, and getting them here is the key, the availability.
So the University of Iowa Center for Diversity and Enrichment has the Summer Enrichment Institute, which is for high school students from Iowa City, and they focus on science as well as public speaking. Every single student who does it does a science fair project in about 3 weeks, and then they have another stage for them.
I feel like I want, this is the example of my scribing in my notes. I feel like I want to get these examples and get them, because I would love to post it on our website.
Because I also got to say, there's an Office of Early Outreach, and during the summer, they have programming from elementary all the way to high school. And I know one of the high school programs is specifically for low SES students, trying to get them on campus, and they stay in a residence hall for a week. So our Office of Early Outreach tries to engage a lot of different various populations in that way.
The last item on the final class slide talked about non-cognitive skills. Could you touch on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so definition of non-cognitive in my research was focused on, it's an article by researcher Garcia in 2005, and she talks about character building, public speaking, and I think I have it on the slides, but that's the definition of you said cognitive or non-cognitive? None, yeah. Character building, public speaking, and there's one more, and I think it's in the slide deck. I kind of put in parentheses what the non-cognitive is: perseverance, self-confidence, building character, and integrity. And it's Garcia, it's a researcher I used, 2014. Yeah, that's how, because it's like this big definition. I remember walking down that, like, what is non-cognitive skills? And so this article, I think it was connected with the STEM of underrepresented minorities and women. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I really appreciate your research. Thank you very much for that. And one of the things that seemed to be a thread through these programs was this idea of students coming back and becoming peer mentors. Did any of the programs have specific strategies for developing peer mentorship? Because I know mentorship is a very important skill.
So if you go to my beautiful literature review slide,
Nice.
it's so beautiful, just so beautiful. Okay, so under the peer mentors, so there is a study that was done, peer mentors. This section right here,
Yeah. Wow.
and you asked about coming back. Oh, training. There is an article. I want to say. There is a really, let me, I can't narrow down, but it's between these articles. There's one of them that did excellent training, and it was on a college campus, and if I remember correctly, what happened is that they took the undergraduate, the high schoolers, and they put a really great curriculum together, and they talked about factors that they had to make sure the training and the curriculum. They did some training before they actually touched the participants. It was quite recognizable.
Check it out. Thanks.
One of your recommendations was about the K-12 classroom environment,
Yes.
and that we ought to be thinking about whether we're setting that up right for girls of color. If this room was filled with K-12 educators, what are 2 or 3 things that you would recommend to them that classroom ought to look like and sound like?
Okay. I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to open this question up to the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell you what I read, but I am not a teacher by formal trade. Is that fair? And I will not be acting like I know the answer to this except what I've read and researched. And so I can tell you what I researched and read, and some of it was he made a really good example. And one of the researchers talked about what was on the wall. And so you have to now, if you put people of color on the wall, think about that next layer of what, and you can even ask the students, what do you think about it? But one of the researchers was talking about when they walk into the environment, does it welcome, like one example was a computer science room, and what do you have in here that's friendly? And then they talked about, for women, women are relational, and the researcher says women are relational. And so one of the things is, it's like, hey, you want to study biomedical engineering so you can help create a pacemaker that you can save lives. And so in regards to young girls and having that classroom friendly, is I would ask them too. What age are they?
I work at elementary.
Elementary? I don't know. Can I open it up? Anyone have some suggestions?
I think you touched on it well when you said on the walls and in the halls. looking at not only contemporary scientists as mentors and as role models, but from a historical standpoint as well. If you look at someone like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has got a wonderful book out about African American inventors, right? So we don't know what we don't know, so once we educate ourselves, and then you can share that with your students. And mentoring is one of the #1 advances or reasons that students and females underrepresented students go into these different fields. So you know what? They've got to experience that, someone that looks like me, so invite her to your classroom. It's very simple.
Okay. Are you in Des Moines area?
Cedar Rapids.
I'll come. I'll give you my card.
There you go.
I'll come.
So there's also been some research about kind of stereotype threat and how you as an educator can kind of give feedback, constructive and positive feedback to students of color to kind of help them. This isn't necessarily for women, but maybe just more minority students. So there's a way that you can kind of structure that feedback in a way that says that, you know, #1, you have to tell them that I believe that you're capable of doing this. I believe in you. You know, these are some areas that you need to work on. I will help you. So there are certain kind of words and phrases that you can use to kind of lift them up. And it's different from maybe the way that you would normally maybe give feedback, you know, like, oh, this was wrong, or you know, you need to correct this or whatever, because then they might see that as, oh, I really don't belong here, because they might be experiencing that already. But there are certain kind of words and language that you can use in providing feedback. I don't know if this is good for elementary, but maybe middle school and high school, like in writing or math assignments or things like that. So there is a way that you can do that to help them believe that they actually do belong there, and that you believe that they can be successful. So,
Excellent.
Thank you.
I teach elementary school, and I work primarily with 3rd through 6th grade students. And something that's important when we're looking at girls, and specifically girls of color in science, is thinking about how we're asking them to engage in the classroom and what that experience looks like from their perspective. So as a Black woman myself, I can just go to the girls and talk to them one-on-one, because the positionality is a little bit different, where I can just engage with them one-on-one and say, hey, what's going on? But if you are a white male in that same environment, that might not necessarily be a safe conversation for the girls. So thinking about, if you are not a woman of color, what is your positionality in terms of eliciting that information from the students, but definitely finding an authentic way to engage with them to say, what is the issue? Because different years I've done different things based on the response of the girls. Some girls wanted a group where it was just all girls working together. They said being with the boys is keeping me from being my authentic self. So I just want to group with us so we can do our thing. Other years I've had girls who said, we just want a little bit more time to practice and have exploration first before it's time to share out. So I don't go in assuming, oh, you're a girl, you're going to want to be in a group of all girls. You're going to want more exploration time. And making sure that I have an authentic way of asking them what's going to help them be successful has been key. And then also having that high expectation of, you will participate, you will speak in front of the class, you will do these things, you will be excellent. And it's my job to help you do those things. But definitely getting their voices is going to be so important.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think you got time for one more. One.
oh, there's one over here. Audrey, I think.
So my thing is, have those difficult conversations with your class, because things like stereotype threat and the different experiences of your students, the fact that your students of color are going to experience this classroom a lot differently than your white students. Have those explicit discussions, and they're uncomfortable and they're weird, and it's hard to have those discussions starting out, but it's also important to have those discussions, because we have to begin to normalize the conversations around race and the different identities that our students have, so that when they get to high school, they're not perpetuating those same systems. We have to start having those conversations with our students. So it's important to have the conversation. Why are most of the scientists that we celebrate only white males? Why are the people that we talk about in this classroom traditionally white males? Why is it that all of our presidents up until recently have been all white males? Why is it that the systems that we have in this country are structured for the benefit of white males? We can have those conversations. They may not be as detailed and in depth at the elementary level as they can be at the high school, but we can still start to have those conversations.
Wait, we have one more. I saw one more.
One more. Come on, Kim, one more.
You had your hand up?
Oh, I work with Code.org on occasion, and they really talk about getting women involved in computer science. And you touched on it, I guess, it was that idea of purpose and connecting to a story. So I don't know if you guys remember the game Temple Run, where you had to run through and zoom and try not to fall. These girls created Tampon Run, because they felt like it was not okay that half the population is affected by this bodily function process, and we can't talk about it. So finding that story, that connection, that place of evolution, that's what it makes the most.
All right, so I want to thank you very much. I want to end with a certain. I want you to end with this. Encourage, start early with the exposure, and encourage, start early with the exposure, and just keep seeking information. Thank you for asking the question. I really appreciate that. Just have truthful conversations. Thank you for this privilege.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Kimberly. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of